Shalom, and welcome to another edition of The Truth Shall Make You Free. I'm your host, Elder Nathaniel, and to my right,
Deacon Asaph.
Today's topic is going to be interracial marriage. But before we get to that topic, let's go to John chapter 8, verse 32.
John chapter 8, verse 32. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
So black man, Latin woman, and black woman, if you want the truth, you must humble yourselves and acknowledge that you are the biblical Israelites, okay? From there, let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 3 and 4. Okay, let's get the law on interracial marriage. Is it okay?
Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 3. Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughters thou shalt not give unto his sons, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. For they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods. So will the anger of the Lord be kindled against you and destroy thee suddenly.
So do y'all hear the law? You're not to give your sons unto their daughters, nor take their sons for your daughters. No interracial marriage. That's the law of God. But you know what a lot of you do? You search the Bible to justify your wickedness. And you go, what about Moses? Moses married an Ethiopian. Yes, Moses did marry an Ethiopian. And the Most High had mercy and allowed it. Why? Remember, where were the Israelites? In captivity. When Moses killed the Egyptian for smiting his brother, where did he run? He ran and fled to the wilderness in the land of Midian. There were no Israelites there for 40 years. So Moses married a woman and had 2 sons, okay? Then he went what? He went back to get the Israelites and to give the law, not the law. He brought forth the plagues on Pharaoh. So now, you are not Moses, okay? And the Most High told Miriam and Aaron, mind your business, shut the hell up. I allowed Moses to do it, okay? But are you in Moses' situation today? Are your people in captivity in another land and you're someplace else? Huh? No, you're not. You're not in that situation. Then the next set of them go, oh, okay. What about Ruth? What about Ruth the Moabite? That's what you do. Let's read the law. Let's go to Deuteronomy 23 and verse 3. So we read the law already about no interracial marriage. Let's see what God says about the Moabites and Ammonites.
Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 3. An Ammonite or a Moabite shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Even to their 10th generation shall they not enter into the congregation of the Lord forever.
Now, your question first and foremost may be, how do you know the Ammonites are the Japanese and the Moabites are the Chinese? When you read Genesis, okay, the history of Sodom and Gomorrah, when the Most High destroyed 5 cities, okay, with meteors came down, destroyed the place,
right.
Okay, you had Lot in a cave with his 2 daughters, okay, remember his wife was turned to a pillar of salt. His 2 daughters said, listen, everybody is dead. They thought everybody was wiped out, okay, they said,
let's get them drunk.
Let's get them drunk.
And lay with them.
And lay with them, exactly. Thank you. That's what happened. So then, what happens when a daughter has sex with her father and brings forth children? What is the popular medical terminology? It's called what? Mongoloidism or Down syndrome. When your eyes, you get that funny look in your eyes, okay?
That pushed in face,
exactly.
Those slanting eyes.
They all got, when you look at them, they all got that.
Those same features.
Same features, the flat face, the eyes is chinked out,
right.
Okay? So one son became the father of the Japanese, that was Ammon. The other son became the father of the Chinese, that was Moab, okay? Now when you read in Ezekiel, it tells you that, I'm going to throw this in there, it says that Nebuchadnezzar took the children of Moab to the east. And remember, Babylon was already in the east, so when it said the east, it meant further east, okay? So that's where you got your Chinese and your Japanese. Now, from there, so we got the 2 laws, right? We got the law, no interracial marriage, and we got the law about Moab and Ammon, that they shall not enter the congregation unto the 10th generation forever. So now, let's go to Judges chapter 21. We're going to hit the book of Ruth now. But before we get there, remember, the book before Ruth is the book of Judges. Now, my question to you is this. Were the Israelites keeping the laws of the Most High by the time you get to the book of Ruth? When you read through the book of Judges? Let's read Judges 21, verse 25.
Judges chapter 21, verse 25.
Watch this.
In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes.
Read it again.
In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes.
Every man did that which was right in his own eyes, not according to the laws of the Most High. So the Israelites were not following the laws of the Most High. Understand that. Now, that leads us to the book of Ruth. Ruth, we want chapter 1. Read verse 1 through 6 for us.
Ruth chapter 1, verse 1. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah.
Now the Most High brought a famine in the land. Why? Because Israel was sinning. Why? Because every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Come on.
And a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab.
He went into the country of Moab.
He and his wife and his 2 sons.
And his 2 sons, his wife and his 2 sons.
And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi. And the name of his 2 sons Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of the Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into the country of Moab and continued there. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died.
So Naomi's husband died. Go ahead.
And she was left and her 2 sons.
And her 2 sons what?
And she was left and her 2 sons. And they took them wives of the women of Moab.
Oh, the 2 sons took wives of the women of Moab. Now, we already read the law. No interracial marriage. Don't give their sons to your daughters or vice versa. And it said, Moab and Ammon shall not enter the congregation of the Lord until the 10th generation forever. So why did these 2 brothers now marry women of Moab? Because Judges 21 verse 25, read that again for us.
In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes.
So now get back to the marriage.
And they took them wives of the women of Moab. The name of one was Orpah, and the other name of the other was Ruth.
Now what verse is that?
That was 4.
Read down to 6.
And they dwelled there about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion died also.
So the 2 husbands, God killed them. They were put to death. They died. Okay, the 2 men died. Go ahead.
Both of them. And the woman was left of her 2 sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab.
So Naomi got up that she wanted to return. She wanted to leave the land of Moab. Go ahead.
For she had heard in the country of Moab how that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread.
So the Lord was having mercy on Israel again and giving them bread. So she wanted to return to Israel. Go to chapter 4. I'm jumping ahead. Many of you know the history. One daughter left and Ruth stayed with Naomi. Okay? We want Ruth chapter 4 and verse 10. Now, I'm going to sum it all up to you. Naomi said, why don't you go back to your own people? Ruth said, no, let your people be my people. Let your God be my God. She said, I want to stay with you, Naomi. They go back to the land. And what happened? Deuteronomy 4 and 10, please.
Ruth chapter 4, verse 10.
Go ahead.
Moreover, Ruth and the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife.
So stop right there. Now this is Boaz speaking. Boaz the Israelite, okay? He purchased Ruth the Moabite to be his wife. Now when you read this whole story there, we don't have all day to read it, but read it on your own. It said one of the closest of kin to Ruth's husband did not want her. Remember, the 2 sons died. So one of the daughter-in-law of Naomi left. Okay, Ruth wanted to stay with Naomi. She said, let your people be my people and your God be my God. But there's a problem. Okay, watch this. There was a law that there should be no sons of Israel cut off. Okay, so what happened? There was a law that said the nearest of kin had to marry the wife to raise up seed. Watch this. Go to Ruth 4, and we want to start at verse 4 to 6.
Ruth chapter 4, verse 4. And I thought to advertise thee, saying, buy it before the inhabitants and before the elders of my people. If thou wilt redeem it, redeem it. But if thou wilt not redeem it, then tell me, that I may know. For there is none to redeem it besides thee, and I am after thee. And he said, I will redeem it.
So this is Boaz, a near of kin, but he's speaking to a closer of kin to Naomi's son. So he's asking him to redeem it, some parcel of land. he says, I will redeem it. Now watch this. Go ahead.
Then said Boaz, what day thou buyest the field of the hand of Naomi,
the day that you buy this field, listen good, the day that you buy this field, come on.
thou must buy it also of Ruth the Moabitess,
You must buy it of Ruth also, the Moabitess. Go ahead.
the wife of the dead,
The wife of the dead. Go ahead.
to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance.
To raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. So Boaz is laying down the law for this next of kin to one of the sons of Naomi. Now watch what happens. Go ahead. What verse you at?
Verse 6 now.
Go ahead.
And the kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar mine own inheritance. Redeem thou mine right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it.
Now notice when it was just redeeming the land, he said, yeah, I could do it. But then when it said, okay, well, the day you buy this land, you got to take on Ruth the Moabite, he goes, lest I mar my own inheritance. Why? Because the child that they would have been not in his name, but in the name of the dead man. Now, watch this, verse 10. Ruth 4, verse 10.
Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife.
This is Boaz speaking. So once that nearest of kin rejected Ruth, Boaz said, I'm going to marry Ruth and raise up children to the name of Mahlon. Read it again.
Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon,
Mahlon, right. Go ahead.
have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren.
That the name of the dead be not cut off from amongst his brethren. Go ahead.
And from the gate of his place ye are witnesses this day.
Now, watch this. What's the law that he's talking about? Get Deuteronomy 25, verse 5 and 6. What law is Boaz speaking of in Ruth, the 4th chapter? This is what a lot of you don't understand. Deuteronomy 25, verse 5 and 6.
Deuteronomy 25, verse 5. If brethren dwell together,
If brethren dwell together,
and one of them die,
and one of them die,
and have no child,
and have no child,
the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger.
the wife of the dead cannot marry outside unto a stranger. Go ahead.
Her husband's brother shall go in unto her,
Her husband's brother, meaning next of kin. Go ahead.
and take her to him to wife, and perform the duty of an husband's
And
brother
perform the duty of a husband's brother.
unto her. And it shall be that the firstborn which she beareth shall succeed in the name of his brother which is dead.
So the firstborn would be in the name of the dead father. Understand that? Was that it?
Yeah. In the name of the brother which is dead, that his name be not put out of Israel.
That his name, that's the point, that his name be not put out of Israel. So for example, he's my brother. He dies. I would have to take his wife. Our firstborn child would be in his name. All inheritance would go to the son in his name, not mine. That's the law. That's the law that was being applied in the book of Ruth. So you brothers and sisters at home, don't throw out Ruth. You're not trying to obey the laws of the Most High when you marry outside your people. So don't try it, all right? From there, let's go to Matthew 22, verse 39. I'm going to show you something. Boaz saw it as kindness, but there's a law that Boaz understood. He understood the law about raising up seed to the dead. Okay, now this also, Matthew 22, verse 39.
Matthew chapter 22, verse 39. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself.
You hear that? Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. That's what Boaz was applying, because Boaz respected the laws of the Most High. He said, why should the name of this brother in Israel be cut off? He said, I'll take Ruth as my wife and raise up children in the name of my dead brother. He loved his neighbor as he loved himself. Now watch this. Matthew 1. Matthew chapter 1 and verse 5. That's why Ruth and Boaz are mentioned in the genealogy of Christ. Matthew 1 verse 5.
Matthew chapter 1 verse 5. And Salmon begat Booz of
That's
Makkah,
Boaz.
and Booz begat Obed of Ruth.
Begat Obed of Ruth. Was that it in verse 5?
That's it.
That's why they're mentioned there. Why? Because they applied the law, love thy neighbor as you love yourself. That's why when Christ came, he was always teaching the Israelites, love ye one another. That's something you blacks and Latinos don't do. You black men, you despise each other, just like you Latin men despise each other. From there, let's go to Exodus chapter 12 and verse 38. Exodus chapter 12, verse 38. So for your time of mentioning Ruth to justify yourself is over, okay? Exodus 12, 38.
Exodus chapter 12, verse 38. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and the flocks and the herds, even very much cattle. And they baked unleavened cakes of dough, which they brought forth out of Egypt.
That was 38?
It's 39 now.
So now, what happened? Read 38 again. All I want is 38.
Verse 38. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and the flocks and the herds, and even very much cattle.
So now, when the Most High delivered the 12 tribes of Israel, a mixed multitude of nations ran out behind the Israelites. We leaving Egypt too. We leaving with y'all. But why do I want to go there? Because you're going to meet a lot of, I call them Christian covered Israelites. That's what I call them. Because you got a lot of Yeshuite Israelites who love that mixed multitude. And you'll find these Israelite congregations with multitudes of white women and white men. And they're all interracial, married to each other up in there. And they go see the mixed multitude. These Israelites who hate themselves and hate their people will search the scriptures to break the Most High's laws. Now watch this. Deuteronomy 28, verse 43. Deuteronomy 28 and verse 43. Now, a mixed multitude ran out behind the Israelites. Watch this.
Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 43. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low.
You hear what the law said? What the prophecy is for the Israelites? This is Deuteronomy 28. Now read verse 15 for us, please.
Deuteronomy 28, verse 15.
I'm bringing this back to your memory.
But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
If you don't hearken to the Lord your God and obey all these commandments, that all these curses will come upon you and overtake you. Verse 43 now. Let's see about the strangers. Remember, the mixed multitude of strangers ran out behind us? This is what God says to us.
Verse 43. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high.
Who is the stranger that was within us? The strange nations that ran out behind us in Exodus 12, verse 38. Read it again.
The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high.
So what does the Lord say? He says, you Israelites, if you break my laws, you see those strange nations amongst you that ran out behind you in Egypt, from Egypt? If you break my laws, although they're your slaves now, those mixed nations, those strangers, they're going to get up above you very high. Read it again.
The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low.
Meaning you Israelites would become the slaves. Those strangers are the slaves now, but if you break my laws, they shall be the head and you shall be the tail. Read on.
He shall lend to thee.
The strangers shall be the ones lending to you.
And thou shalt not lend to him.
And you Israelites would not lend to them. Go ahead.
He shall be the head.
Those strangers, those nations that are your slaves right now, they shall be the head, meaning the leaders of you.
And thou shalt be the tail.
Meaning you shall be the slave. Understand that. Now, watch this. Let's go to Joshua 23. I'm going to remind you of the law again. Joshua 23, verse 11 through 13. I'm going to remind you of the law again. Okay?
Joshua 23, verse 11.
We want 11 to 13, and that's it.
Take good heed, therefore, unto yourselves, that ye love the Lord your God. Else if ye do in any wise go back and cleave unto the remnant of these nations.
If you go back from God's laws and cleave unto the remnants of the nations that are around you.
Even these that remain among you, and shall make marriages with them.
So what is Joshua reminding them? He said, if you leave the Most High's laws, and you make marriages with these other nations,
and go in unto them, and they to you, know for a certainty that the Lord your God will no more drive out any of these nations from before you.
See that? Joshua reminded you Israelites. He said, if you make marriages with these other nations, the Lord your God would no longer go before you, meaning he won't protect us no more. Go ahead.
But they shall be snares and traps unto you.
Meaning these other nations that you married, they shall be snares and traps. Now, aren't these other nations that our people marrying today snares and traps?
That's right.
Look what happened to OJ. You see what happened, right? Got all caught up, all into the midst of madness. Snares and traps. Come on. Down to 13.
And scourges in your side.
And scourges in your side, meaning they always going to cause you problems. Go ahead.
And thorns in your eyes.
Thorns in your eyes.
Until you perish from off this good land which the Lord your God hath given you.
Until you perish from off this good land which the Lord your God given. So Joshua reminded us of the law. He said, in case you forgot what Moses commanded you, I'm going to remind you again. So now watch this. Let's go to Nehemiah 13. Nehemiah chapter 13. Because now what happened after Joshua, sometime later, the Israelites went into captivity. The nation of Israel split into two kingdoms, and the Israelites went into captivity. You had the Assyrian captivity, you had the Babylonian captivity, then you had the Persian Mede captivity. Nehemiah, the prophet, is in the Persian captivity. Watch this. Nehemiah chapter 13, we want verse 23 to 27.
Nehemiah chapter 13, verse 23.
Watch this.
In those days also saw I Jews that had married wives of Ashdod.
Africans? So wait a minute. Nehemiah was able to go back to the land of Israel, our homeland. Then he said, in those days did I see what?
I saw Jews that had married wives of Ashdod.
Who are the Jews? Remember, the Jews comprised of three tribes primarily: Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. That's who was termed Jews. Read it again.
In those days, I saw Jews that had married wives of Ashdod.
They married wives of Ashdod, Africans.
Of Ammon.
And
Japanese.
We already read the law earlier about not to be with them.
Right.
Go ahead.
Of Ammon.